So we're gonna talk about this Pixii camera. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thomas Love here from beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, and today I have a bit of a cold, so pardon me if my voice is not so warm and deep as it used to be. But anyway, we're gonna talk about the Pixii camera that I've been using for a good month right now. If you follow the channel for a while, you know that I waited a couple of years before having a complete review of my Leica Q2 because I wanted to explore it thoroughly. I wanted to give my personal value, add something to the many reviews that were already present on the web out there, and so I really wanted to enjoy it and use it over and over and over so that I knew thoroughly my product. While this camera, it doesn't belong to me. It has been borrowed by the company. They have been so nice to send one over for me to test and review, and so I tried to concentrate all the effort and experience in the smallest period possible. So every single morning, come hell or high water, I hanged it onto my neck before going out. And what is the result? The thing is that even if it's a different camera, it's a different brand, it's a different focal length and a different lens, I'm gonna compare it to my Leica Q2, which I'm using right now to record this episode, not because they are comparable cameras. One is a mirrorless with autofocus and with optical image stabilization. The other one is a manual rangefinder. So they're not comparable in the specs, but they're comparable in the kind of use I make out of them, because I use them in the exact same way most of the time, shooting from the hip with zone focusing. So this said, how does it work for us to compare, to evaluate, to judge an object, a service, a person, or an experience? The thing is that we tend to put labels on that thing. Even if it's an object or an experience, we want to put a label because we want to assign it to a specific cluster. So we will use it as a reference so that we can compare with other objects present in the same cluster and say, this is good, this is bad, and why. While with this camera, well, this camera follows the rhythm of its own drum, because yes, it's a digital rangefinder, but it's also the only digital rangefinder to have the Leica M-mount glasses apart from the Leica rangefinders, of course, and it's also the only rangefinder having an APS-C sensor, as well as it's the only rangefinder that can give you raw files, either color or black and white, so monochrome. So this makes it quite special, quite unique, and also the shooting experience is quite unique, but we will discuss about it later. Now, since we cannot assign this to a specific cluster, I would rather assign it to a specific kind of use. Now, if you allow me to use a metaphor, I want to compare photography to traveling, because if I wake up this morning in Vancouver like I did, I might be able to go to sleep tonight in Honolulu. I just need to take a flight and get there within the same day. So basically, I'm deleting all that's in between because it's not relevant to me anymore. I just wake up in Vancouver and I want to go to sleep in Honolulu. But once upon a time, what was in between was the actual journey. So if we want to use the same metaphor with photography, you can wake up a morning with your Sony autofocusing, tracking, 200 burst rates, whatever, all the options that you can get. You just need to pay for it and get that technology, and then you own it, and you can take the pictures and let the camera take decisions for you. Or you can actually enjoy the journey with the manual camera. So what you need, and this is why I want to compare it to my Leica Q2, because I use them in the exact same way, is that you have your exposure triangle really at hand. You have the f aperture directly on the lens, you have the shutter speed on this wheel, and you have the ISO with the FN button, so the function button quick menu. You have everything at hand. You don't have to dig inside the menu if you want to change anything. You do it right away, right on the spot. In addition to that, if you're also using zone focusing, you can also shoot from the hip. So maybe it's not so accurate as an autofocus mechanism, but it's way faster. So all these things said, who is the target of this camera? This camera is targeting people who are keep doing photography the way they started to. I started decades ago with film cameras. They were fully manual. We didn't have the exposure aids, so on and so forth, I needed to have my agenda. I needed to write down all the settings that I use every time, the shutter speed, the f aperture, because it was a learning by doing experience. And then eventually they introduced some help for the metering, and then eventually they introduced higher ISO film, and then eventually we all started to shoot digital. But one thing that I still have with me when I go out there for taking my pictures, apart from the camera hang on my neck, is my agenda, because I want to write down the feelings that that shot evoked in me. And why is it so special? Because if I want to tell a story, I need to remind exactly the feelings that I had when I was exposed to that situation, to that scene, and maybe also what song was playing in my mind when I saw it. And it's good to say playing a song, because you play an instrument, you don't work an instrument, and so I am playing my camera. That's the key. So if you can relate to what I just said, probably this camera is for you as well. Is it the latest technology advancements? It's not. Is it the best camera money can buy? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But does it answer your needs? Oh yes, it will. And now we'll see aspect by aspect why this is a camera worth considering. First and foremost, the assembly. The size and shape, this is so lightweight, it has more or less the same dimensions as the Leica M-11, which is 5mm thicker, while this is a bit slimmer, but more or less it's the exact same body dimension, and it weighs like 100 or 200 grams less. Leica has a different weight if you purchase the silver or the black version, while this is always the same weight, and the assembly is so well done. I talked to the owner, to the founder of Pixii, the company, and they said they moved to Besançon in France because in that region they have a lot of knowledge about the assembly of watches, and so they are really good with also small tolerances and to have pieces with machinery and assembly by hand. And so the assembly is done by hand in France. You can tell it is very good and well done. And I also appreciate the dimension, because on my Leica Q2, which is a bit smaller, a bit more compact, I had to add a grip, while here, even if I have big hands, I have enough room to keep it steady. So if you are walking in the street and you have this camera hanging at your neck and you are keeping it steady and you are shooting from the hip and it evokes some feeling, and then you live in that moment, you don't try to explain what you are seeing, you just want to witness it and freeze it and take it with you. The Japanese have a word which is Yugen, Y-U-G-E-N, which I can relate especially when I'm using this camera. Now, the sensor is the best sensor money can buy, or at least it was the best until when they released the Leica M-11, which is outscoring. So this had a score of 90, it was performing better compared to the Leica M10 at the time, and then the Leica M-11 has a BSI, so now it's performing better. But if you take away that Leica, this is the best sensor out there, and so the sensor is performing very well. I started using it most of the times in monochrome because it was the new news to me, so I wanted to shoot monochrome, but eventually I came back to use it with a Bayer filter, and I'm getting incredible results. I'm showing you a few ones down here. Every time I go out, I am pleasantly surprised by the quality that comes out from this camera. We all know that the sensor plays an important role, but the main difference is played by the glasses, and so this is why this camera, it has to be appreciated, because you can use your Leica M-mount glasses with the Pixii, and so if you have a few with you for over the years, you can just pop them in and then you select the framing lengths that you want to have. At the moment I'm using a Voigtlander 35mm f1.4, which is more than enough, and it gives me, with a crop factor, a full frame comparable focal length of 52.5mm. While I spent the last 3 years shooting 28mm and eventually cropping in digitally, while right now I have a bit more reach with this lens, which doesn't bother me at all, especially for street photography, because you are more in touch with your subject. And then if you're using the zone focusing, you are guesstimating the focal distance here from 0.7 meter to eventually 235 and then infinite. and so you can change the setting with the knob right here in a fraction of a second. What else to be said in this camera? Once you download the DNG file, if you're using Lightroom, you can have the profile set already. You can use the portrait 123 and landscape 123, which are masks of color that will be applied onto your file, but the DNG will retain the whole of information. While if you're not using Lightroom, as I'm not using Capture One, you just need to post-process. But Capture One, I will show you in a future video how to do the photo editing of the raw files coming from the Pixii, because it's very easy. Even with Capture One, it does most of the job by itself, and similarly to Leica cameras, you want to underexpose to avoid burning the highlights, but you will have 14 f-stops of dynamic range managed from the camera, so it's more than enough to get compelling results. It has a few flaws, just to mention them. One is that the hot shoe is not a hot shoe, it's just a shoe where you can mount, but it's a mechanical mount, it doesn't have any contact. What does it mean? That you cannot use a TTL flash if you are using it. The second thing, which I'm discussing already with the company, is that it doesn't have automatic ISO. That would be a very good help for street photography, to cap it to, I don't know, 32, 60, 400 and let the camera manage it, so you can just choose the shutter speed and the f-aperture and the camera will manage the ISO by itself. But they are working on it. They said that eventually in the future software release that will be updated. And apart from that, I don't think I have anything else to mention. This third iteration of the Pixii camera added an overlay inside the EVF, so you see the framing lines as well as the shutter speed, the ISO, the main info when you're looking inside your camera. So it's very handy. You don't need to go out and check in the upper display or in the menu. Everything is ready already. The battery, I got two different batteries. It goes running for, let's say, 200 to 150 shots each battery, and I'm not using it paired with the phone. I know they are paying a lot of importance to the app that you can download and have in your phone, the Pixii app, if you want to share your photos right away. I don't do it because I'm an old fellow, so I play it the same old way. I take my pictures, and then when I go back home, I plug the camera, I download them, I revise which one I got, which one I nailed, and which ones I missed, and I don't miss many, fortunately. So stay tuned, because in the next episodes I'm gonna test this camera. I want to show you side by side what it changes when you switch from shooting Bayon to monochrome. How many f-stops are you gaining if you are getting more or less grains with the monochrome in low light situations, so on and so forth. So that will be a dedicated episode, so stay tuned, because I will keep playing and testing and challenging this camera, which I'm liking more and more every day. So with that, I hope you got some value out of this video. If you did, please remember to like it, share it on your social media, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the new videos to come, and I guess I will see you later. Thank you. Bye bye.